Hey, MBA hopefuls, we are on the air with MBA Waves, your weekly vidcast talking all things business and education, streaming live every Tuesday on LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. I know LinkedIn is giving a little bit trouble today, so if you're on LinkedIn and not able to connect, if you're even seeing this message, you can jump onto one of the other channels and catch us there. So today on this 115th episode, we're talking about making the most of your first weeks on campus. 10 things that you should do to kickstart your MBA off on the right foot. We're going to learn what to expect during the first days and weeks of your MBA program, what life is like on campus, and how to kick off your MBA like the rock star that you are. And don't forget to like this episode if you enjoyed today, and don't forget to subscribe to get tons of free tips and to get up close and personal with some of the world's top ranked business schools. I'm your host for today, Eric Lucrezia, joined by my co-hosts Bara and Krithika. How you guys doing?
Wonderful. I'm good. Barking dogs, garbage trucks. It's a Tuesday.
It's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. And we have not one, but two guests joining us today. One is still on the way, but I'm going to start off by introducing Tina François, who is an MBA recruitment specialist who spent, I believe, 10 years, or is it 12, working at INSEAD. How you doing, Tina?
Hey, thanks for inviting me today.
Actually, we have a little bit of time for our other guests joining us. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background at INSEAD, if you want? I know we met recruiting at an MBA fair, I believe, in Vancouver many moons ago.
Yes. So I was one of those road warriors that used to travel around and kind of help prospective MBA students pick out the right school for them and find a school that's the right fit for them. I was responsible for North and South America, and then took on a little piece of Europe as well when we got someone in to cover North America. So yeah, Eric and I met 10-ish years ago, I think. In Vancouver, and then traveled North America, South America, Asia. We did several trips together. So that was when you were at ISEC and I was at INSEAD.
Yeah, definitely remember Japan, Latin America, Canada. Yeah, conquering the world. Our other guest is a current second-year student in the Harvard MBA program who is coming out of class like right now and will be joining us any second. That's Alana. We'll introduce her in just a second. Being that today's episode is kind of a back to school, as they say in France, the rentrée, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some experiences like coming back and what the first moves that you remember back when you were a student. You guys, Krithika, Bara, you both were at Michigan. What are some things that you remember back at Michigan, the way to start off the year? You're on mute, Bara.
I remember just in general how that the first day of school was always just so exciting. You know, like there was this feeling that bubbled up, like I'm going to go to class and I'm getting these new books and like there's all this new knowledge and who's going to be in my class and what am I going to learn and who am I going to be at the end of the semester and what am I going to wear? Like what am I going to wear today? And I mean, what am I going to wear? I think goes back to second grade. You know, what am I going to wear this first week? And, you know, because it's going to be a little while before I'm wearing sweats, you know, into class, but I want to look good at the beginning.
It didn't take me long in college.
Yeah. So I just remember the first week just being so like, it was just percolating. Everything felt like it was percolating. It was like sort of like spring fever, but in the fall.
What about you, Krithika?
Yeah, I think I remember football season. The crazy clamor for getting, the tickets. It was just crazy. Like people would say, like, "Are you a student?" I'm like, I don't even know what football is. I only knew soccer, so American football was so alien to me. But I remember the second thing was clamoring for registering for classes, especially ones that were so popular, and you're kind of like the last person to get in. And this was the time, like I think 14 years ago, when the internet was probably not that strong enough, so it would hang. And then you'll be wondering, did I get into the class or did I not get into the class? So I remember and then like, of course, in second semester, by then, like how to game the system, tackle the system, and so on. And I would say like the other thing was getting used to the books that you needed in school, which is very different than probably back home in India, where you probably will be given everything as part of your, even when you go to college here, you get all the stuff that you need. And it's kind of like issued to you. But here it's a very different in the US and elsewhere, I'm sure it's a different system. So getting all those new swanky textbooks and things like that,
That cost a fortune.
they cost
It
a
was
fortune. Yeah.
Ulrich's Books and Supply and Michigan Book and Supply or something. I think those were the two places, right, that we had to
Yeah.
get them. Mhm.
Yeah, but it's such. I think the one thing I will never forget is the excitement that would happen every semester, of starting something new and looking forward to having this dedicated time towards learning and taking up new activities. So I was this crazy person who took different things from and made use of the entire UMich colleges,
Yeah,
which
me
were
too.
wonderful. So I took Spanish, I took piano, 4 credit, and I think I took 18 credits out of 18 credits in the very first semester, which I would never recommend to anybody unless they want to kill themselves.
It's
So
about
yeah.
finding your balance. I mean, first of all, it must have been wild for you coming from India and just plunging into American culture, like the American like collegiate football scene, right? That hoorah, the homecoming,
Especially
all,
Michigan.
pep rally, especially Michigan, like everything from like pep rally to fall fest to the games, like the stadium, the beer, the fraternities, sororities. If you get involved with that, it is a universe. And I think one of the hardest things is finding the right balance. Because if you're someone like me who's curious about a lot of things and pretty social, like you end up getting involved with so many different things that it's hard to find that balance to get your work done, which is obviously the main reason you're there. But also a lot of those extracurricular things can be quite strategic in shaping, some perceptions about future career paths, about building relationships, network, right? Which is obviously so important at the MBA level, right? So what we're going to get into today is like, how can you be more strategic about where you spend your time? I remember about 2 years ago, I was interviewing a bunch of alumni from a few different MBA programs. And it was kind of like, yeah, this was 2021 because the title of the article was, is an MBA still relevant in 2021? And what it came down to was soft skills. For those of you who hate the word soft skills, we can call them human skills, essential skills, whatever. But you know what I mean? Not, doing Excel tables basically and crunching numbers. But one of them that came up time and time again was like, you will learn how to time manage like a champ. Like you never knew you could, and you just have to. Like MBA is kind of like a boot camp for. Here come Alana. I see her popping on the screen now. MBAs are kind of like a boot camp for you to become like top management in the corporate world for a lot of people. All right, I'm gonna let Alana into the room. Hi, Alana.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for your patience while I
How are
was
you?
in
Thank you
class.
for joining us.
Of course.
So we just kind of went around the room and did a little bit of introductions, just kind of warming up the conversation. You're in Boston, I guess. You want to introduce yourself?
For sure. So, hi, everyone. My name is Alana Hinkston. I'm originally from California, which is where I went to Santa Clara University for undergrad, where I studied marketing and communications. After that, I went and moved to Minneapolis, where I worked for Target. I had 3 lives. I actually started my career in marketing. Then I did a spin in customer research, and then I ended off in innovation, working specifically on accelerator programs and helping Target bring minority-owned businesses onto the shelves. And then while there, I decided I wanted to go get my MBA. So I was blessed and highly favored and got into Harvard, which is where I am now, starting my 2nd year.
So you're used to that crisp air in the Northeast by now. It's not Santa Clara anymore.
No, not at all. Luckily, Minneapolis taught me a ton. I actually never had to pull out my heavy jacket whatsoever last year.
Oh, wow. Okay. So just so you know, I know you didn't get to meet Tina. Tina, she spent about 10, 12 years at INSEAD. She was in charge of recruitment and marketing for the MBA program there. So you have some staff people. I come from the recruitment side as well at ESSEC Business School, also here in France. Bara has her test prep company, and Krithika does a variety of things with her company in India called Career Labs. And so the way we do things, we're going to ask some questions, and we'll let our guests have first crack at answering, whoever wants to go, and then it'll just be a conversation. So just to get things started, guys, what are some of the first things you can expect to happen when at the beginning of the year? Like a lot of times there's an orientation program, but you're in it right now. Maybe Alana, you want to start off, and then they'll give Tina some time to think about what she remembers from INSEAD or even back when she was at Iowa State.
Oh my gosh. I think the first thing is expect to be really tired, just exhausted, because it's a lot of new happening at one time, right? So I think the first new thing is just you're not in the work world anymore. You're back in school For some of us, I'd been out of school for 6, 7 years. So it's just the idea of like being somewhere where you live and work in the same place. And I think everybody, it feels like high school almost again, where everyone like for the most part doesn't have friends. Everyone's like, let's do this, let's do that. So you're just all over the place. And so you're trying to balance whatever social aspect is there with also just the rigor of being back in the classroom, like and sitting down for long periods of time and you don't talk, which is really weird because in the workplace, I never sit in a meeting where I'm not talking. And so I think that just is very exhausting on top of just long days and probably longer than what you're used to in the workforce.
It's funny, just before you came into the room, I was speaking about time and time management. So it's very timely what you just said. Tina, anything to add on to that?
Yeah, I mean, the first week, just like you said, Alana, exhausting is definitely it. My advice in that respect would be don't miss out on some, because especially that first week when there's orientation, there's, things to get involved in. You're checking out what's there. Am I going to go more on the sporty side of extracurriculars or more on the business side or both, and it can be really tempting to want to do it all. Generally, people that are pursuing an MBA are kind of the FOMO, want to do it all kind of people anyway. So it's really easy to kind of get sucked into absolutely everything because you want to. And like you said, Eric, you want to make the most out of this year or 2 years, depending which school you're going to. So don't miss out, but also don't spread yourself too thin. Don't overdo it. Make sure you do find some kind of balance. So, look at your options and then kind of prioritize your list and start at that top of your list. Join in on the things that really are a priority to you. And then as you get into the year and you see what your course load feels like, then maybe see, okay, maybe I can add in another thing or two. But I think spreading yourself too thin it can happen quickly. And all of a sudden you're everywhere on all the fronts. And it's just a rough way to start off your year, to start off the experience. So I would say don't miss out, but also don't overdo it.
Yeah. Balance.
I could definitely relate to that. I just remember being on the Michigan campus. It was like they would have these fairs. I feel like they happened really soon. As soon as people got there, it was not orientation happened at a different time during it would happen during the summer and you would go for like a weekend. But they would have these tables set up of all the clubs one day and then tables set up of all the fraternities and sororities and all the volunteer opportunities and then all of the other opportunities. Like it was just a constant flow. And it was the union, right? And then inside the union, there would be things happening all the time. And at what computer are you going to use? Are you going to bring this is a long time ago. It was only IBM and only Mac. And so it was just there was just a lot of action all the time. A lot of information to take in. And exactly like what Alana said, it's like, you want, who are your friends? Are they going to be the people that you live near, your neighbors? You might be living off campus if you're a business school student. So how are you living? What choices are you making? And how are you going to keep up eating right, sleeping enough, getting fresh air, all the things that you might have been able to integrate as a working professional. But all of a sudden there's this whole new thing as a business school student. So I can totally see that. I'm curious about traditions on campus. Are there traditions that you can think of at either of the schools that you guys are at or for the other hosts of the show? Do you remember any traditions?
Yeah, I think I can hop in there. So, at HBS, a big part of our, culture is the sections. You come in, you're part of a section. It's 90 people that you're with the entire first year, every single class, and then you're that section for the rest of your life. And so for us, on the first day before they release the sections, everyone gets in front of the library and it's all together for the release. And so you see people holding up their phones with whatever letter they are. So you kind of find each other and you just get to kind of spend that first morning together. And then there's always the classic parties that happen within the first couple weeks that everyone gets dressed up for. And then I think there's just more that come throughout the year. For us, we have a ton of international students. And so we have Flag Day. So we have a day where we hang up all the flags in the classroom and people tell us a little bit about their culture and at home. So I think they're ones where before, unless you know someone who was there before you, you don't really know about them. But then once you kind of get on campus, you hear the vibes and people just start talking about it. So you pick up on what the different traditions are.
That makes sense. That sounds super fun, actually. I mean, I thought of Hogwarts as soon as you talked about the sections, and I thought about, oh wow, do you have different clothing or anything? Do you have like t-shirts or?
I think everyone got T-shirts. I've only worn
See?
it one time. I was not my color for me, but yeah, we got T-shirts that first day.
Tina, how about you?
Yeah, so at INSEAD, there's so many traditions, and I think the beauty of traditions is that you feel like you really are a part of this bigger thing, and it's something that when you're running into alumni, whether it's while you're still a student or 5 years down the road or 50 years down the road, you see an alum and you immediately, even if you're struggling for something to talk about, you've got those traditions in common and you can talk about them and talk about, oh yeah, back in my day. Or so it's nice to have that connection to all the other alumni. At INSEAD, there are some more serious traditions and some less serious traditions. Like you were saying, Alana, for that first week on campus, they get involved in a community project, which is really from start to finish. The Splash organization actually organizes them, and you are building something for some kind of NGO or kind of nonprofit organization or a government type association or something that needs usually some kind of infrastructure. Lots of times it's an outdoor space, whether it's a garden or something like that. And you get together in your team. So they are dressed up with their t-shirts. Each section has their t-shirts. And, it's funny. I remember one student saying, man, I'm paying this much money to come here and like pound stakes into the ground. But it's an amazing tradition. And really at the end of the week, you're doing things, most people don't have any kind of background in construction or building. So at the end of, it's not even a full week, it's just a couple of days, but you realize that you've actually, built something big that actually has an impact on the local community. So that's one really cool tradition that happens. We also have at INSEAD, they had national weeks. So they would do a big kind of a fair where each nationality, each nationality, I guess, would get together and kind of showcase and try to sell their country because there are so many there that we can't do one for every country represented. So they go and try to get bids. So they come in and they do like amphi-storming and come in and try to get people to vote for their country for one of the national weeks. And then those are scheduled regularly throughout the year. And then the little bit less serious one that is also a major tradition kind of came from this habit of students that find themselves sprinting into the classroom. Because if anyone who knows about INSEAD knows that time is very seriously respected. If you're late for class, you may just be locked out. It is very serious to be on time and be punctual to class. So lots of times you'll catch students, running in at the last minute, especially for those early morning classes. And so they created the tradition that is called the Dash, the INSEAD Dash. And so it is basically just this mob of students running towards their class every morning. And they decided to make it kind of an event. So one day per year, they do the Dash and they all get dressed up at the craziest things you've ever seen. And they run in and then they go to class dressed as anything you've ever imagined. So it's nice to have kind of the more serious focused traditions, but also some of those kind of fun and silly ones too.
It's great because like you said, those traditions year over year, they're doing the same thing. And it really makes that kind of transgenerational kind of connection between alumni. Yeah. Fantastic. And also I love that, these people who are there to be serious and like kick ass professionally are being silly and human and vulnerable. And that's just fun. One of the things that I used to work at ESSEC Business School, what they would do every year, the first week, they did this kind of integration week. And it was at a place called Saint Cyr, which for American equivalency, that'd be like West Point, right? It's a military academy, top level. And for a week they're there and they're doing these kind of ropes courses, like team building stuff, like get the whole group, get the whole cohort over the, 15-foot wall, or like build a bridge out of, I don't know, like ropes, I guess, and logs, and you have to like figure out how to build it and get the whole team over the river, these kind of things that are very physical. A lot of people were full of fear and trepidation because they heard about what it was like. And at the end of it, everyone loved it. Everyone had a great time. A lot of broken nails, a lot of scratches and bruises, but people had the best time and came back like a tight knit, like a family. This is like a very small cohort, so it was very much like that. Anyway, the traditions are great for all the reasons you guys just described. Thank you for sharing that. Krithika, you're up.
Right. So I was wondering, like, probably you don't have to dash if you're probably living on campus. So I was curious about how living on or off campus affects your approach of embracing the MBA program.
I guess I can take this one. So I'm really lucky. I live on campus. I still do I wouldn't say I run, but I have gotten a quicker pace to my walking. I would say, how does it impact it? I mean, I think everything for me is just more convenient than a lot of my peers who live off campus. So coming to class, being able to just like drop into maybe an after class like club meeting or info session, I can kind of just like roll out, walk 5 minutes and be there. I would say for those who are off campus, I think it's just a little bit more pre-planning, probably something closer to what you're used to in the work world, right? Like, oh, I need to, if I'm coming onto campus, I might need to plan to be there all day. So I might not want to stay on campus till 9, 10 o'clock because I don't want to have to like try to get myself back at home. But I think it's also like a personal choice. Like I've heard a lot of friends who say, oh, I love living off campus because I feel like I get a separation between school and then like I get to go home, have my personal life versus me. I live off of convenience. So it was a priority for me to live on campus because I was like, I just want to be able to get where I need to go as fast as possible. I think that decision, I mean, it's two ways this decision is going to be made. Either you make it or it's going to be made for you, right? Most campuses, if they have on campus, it's probably very limited. So you either are in it or you're out. So like I said, you didn't make that choice, or it's just something that you chose on your own. And I feel as though like you're at the point in your life where like you're an adult, so you kind of know how you are, right? Like if you're okay with living in a dorm type room, you probably already know that about yourself. Versus me, I knew I needed a full kitchen, full apartment, living room, separation. So I made the choices based on that.
Nice. All right. Well, I'll just jump in then. So knowing that MBA programs attract a lot of strong leaders, right? Many of whom might be these kind of type A personalities that a lot of people imagine MBA programs to be full of. What are some suggestions you would have, to come off as positive and friendly, but also being strategic at the beginning of the year? Like, how do you have the strategy, making friends, making connections? I'm thinking of you,
Yeah.
Alana. You're in this right now.
Yes. Oh my gosh, did I have a strategy coming in? I did. My strategy was I wanted to like be known, like I wanted to like be known, but like not like be like everywhere all the time. I feel like when I was in undergrad, I did every club. Like if there was a club, I was probably involved. And I knew this time around, I wanted to focus more on myself and my career. So I think I was a little bit more selective of like how I decided to spend my time. But my strategy was like, hey, I'm gonna try anything one time. So the first couple weeks, my goal is just like show up. Like if I'm invited to something, go check it out. I might not need to stay till the end of it, but let me see what it is. And then I would say my strategy was just like be myself. Like I think it's so easy to get in an environment and you see so many different people and you're like, I want people to like me and all that. Like those feelings that like again, those feelings of high school all come back in. Of like I want people to like me. I want all of these things. And I think for me, the biggest part was just like, I'm just gonna be myself. I'm gonna laugh at the jokes that I would normally laugh at. I would make the jokes that I would normally make, right? And I would invite people to do things I like to do. So I'm not a big outdoorsy person. So you didn't see me being like, oh, I'm volunteer to lead a hike. Like that's not my MO, but I'm like, hey, I love a good brunch. So I'll invite people over to my house to have brunch. And so I think coming in, it's really helpful to kind of know like who you are, what you enjoy, because you're going to get a ton thrown at you at one time. And it's going to be easy to like switch it up. But I think it's just know who you are, stay with that. And like the people who are going to like you are going to like you. And the people who aren't probably wouldn't have anyways. So like I think it all falls the way that it's supposed to fall. And I think that was just kind of my approach first year. And then second year, it kind of turned into like, I have my people. I really don't need to show up to something if I really don't want to do it. And just going more deeper connections was the strategy shift between the 2 years.
Sure. I mean, self-awareness and emotional intelligence are two traits that, you know, MBA admissions committees really, really look for and pride themselves in selecting based on, right? So it makes sense going into the approach. But I can totally imagine like all those high school feelings coming back, you know?
Oh, it was wild. Like there were things where I was like, I thought I had already recovered from this. Like I'm been 10 years out the game. Like, what's going on? But I think a big part is like having your support system outside of this school too. Like people who can like keep you straight and be like, that's not you. What are you doing? And so I think it's the hardest thing to do, but it was the most necessary. Like having calls with my sister, like texting my best friends, like that helps keep you pretty centered as well. Because you have to remember that like this thing is only 1-2 years. You had a whole life before this. You're gonna have a whole life after this. Like, and who you were before is great because you got into the school. Who you will be is also gonna be great. And so I think it's helpful to have someone to center me when all those 18-year-old feeling or 14-year-old feelings like came back up.
Before I pivot over to Tina, because you spoke about the relationships with fellow students, but what about other people? There's loads of other profiles on that campus. There's professors, there's career services people, there's loads of other kinds of people that you might want to be strategic about building relationships with. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I think for me, I went for the what's natural feels natural approach. Everybody's very different. So I came in having an idea. Well, I came in first semester being like, I'm burnt out. I'm focusing on the other students' peer relationships. And so that was my strategy versus trying to like meet everyone and everybody. And so from there, I think it just became more natural. Like I would meet a professor or meet someone at an event and be like, oh, I vibe with you. It's like then I would set up more time and keep meeting them. Like obviously I looked into all the services that the school had, but I went more so for I'm going to be around. If I meet someone that's interesting, I'll continue the conversation. But I personally didn't go off of I'm going to be in everybody's office every single week. Like, because my goal was to not burn myself out within the first 6 months. I took a more slower approach where I know other people take different approaches based on like their goals and what they're trying to do.
Tina, what would you say to this topic of strategic relationships, whether it be fellow students, staff, whatever?
I would say, they always, it's a bit cheesy, but they always say you have, 2 ears in one mouth. So listen twice as much as you talk. I think listening to the people around you and finding how you can help them. I feel like a lot of people are there going, okay, I'm going to make friends with the people that can help me. Who can help me? But if you're the one that's listening and finding out how you can help other people, listening for what their needs and wants are, or listening for, that connection that they need with somebody in, some industry or sector that you can make, and introducing those people, connecting and really giving, being generous, I think is something that when you're trying to make the most of your time, that's maybe not the first thing that comes to your mind is, how can I help all these other people? But I feel like that's a really good way to get back in return as well. But without just kind of walking around and making strategic relationships, just keep your ears open, listen for, what other people might need and see how you can be helpful to them.
Be useful. I mean, that is strategic. You're helping other people. So in the short term, you're giving other people what they need, but they're also going to hopefully probably remember that and be grateful. And when it comes time to it, like they'll help you when you need help. So yeah.
Ultimately, it's not what we say, it's how we make people feel, right? Aunt Maya Angelou?
Yep, absolutely.
So that generosity of spirit and modeling even for younger students that are either first years or students that are at the school that you're at, they see the graduate students, right? So it's a good lesson for them to have.
Well, and also, if you do something that makes you shine, people will remember it for a little bit. If you do something that makes someone else shine, they're going to remember that forever. So it just goes back to kind of, finding out what you can do for others too. And just like you said, Bara, it's how you make them feel. And if you put them in a place where you're helping them kind of shine or make those connections, then they're going to remember that for a long time.
The great Maya Angelou said it. I can't take full credit. I just brought it in to the conversation.
Bara, I think you're up.
I think Krithika's up.
Okay.
Yeah. I was going to ask, like, how can students make use of all the services provided by the school in the first 3-4 months, so that they know it's available and they can use the best plans? Because I know when students come in, they have so many plans, but then they're also probably overwhelmed. So just was curious about the resources offered by the school to help them manage.
That's such a great question. I feel like I'm second year and I'm still finding services that I didn't know existed. I think the biggest thing is like just have your goals and know what you want, and find those second years on campus who have been around, who are trying to do what you want to do. And that's how I got connected to the services that made the most sense for me personally. So like for me, I came in with my priorities. I was like, first thing, therapy. Let me go make sure I visit the office, understand like how I can find a therapist that makes sense for what I needed. 1. 2, career-wise, I was looking to make a pivot. So what are the different, resources available outside the classroom to help me make that pivot? And then I was like 3, affinity groups. How do I get plugged into those as a way to get involved? So I feel as though like if you ask the question, someone somewhere will have the answer. And I think the key is finding the balance, right? Because there are people who like want to do everything, and that's just like impossible. There's literally 24 hours in a day, and you're supposed to be asleep for 8 of them, right? And you're probably supposed to be in the classroom for the other 5 to 6. So, right, you have to find that right balance between like, I want to do everything all right now, and learning how to like scope it out. So like before I even started school, I bucketed everything by semesters. So it's like first semester, here are my 3 priorities. Second semester, my 3 priorities. And then third, and then fourth. And then I revisited over the summer and said, okay, I made a shift here. Based on what I learned, I made a shift here. So I tried to spread out when I needed a service or what I did in order to be able to have the capacity to fully be present at this experience, but also get what I want. I'll probably still be figuring stuff out, honestly, every day. Like I said, I'm finding something new that I didn't know we had access to. So maybe every school is different in how they show the resources, but it's been fun to try to navigate.
And I love
Especially
it,
finding
right?
the best coffee, right? Where to get the best coffee, where to get the best, how do you get like you were talking about like walking faster to class earlier, Alana. And I was thinking like, I remember that too. And like, how can I like get a coffee in between point A and point B?
So and I love that approach, because it's more like use as you go and trying to find what you want at the time, but having those relationships already set up. So should you need it, you're just going asking. Tina, how was it at INSEAD?
There are a lot of services, when talking about the services available, that's one thing, but the reality of it is there's not a day where you're learning about all the different services available. You've also got the clubs coming at you. You've also got the extracurriculars. You've also got, the professional clubs and the sport clubs and everything else kind of coming at you at the same time. So it can be hard to not lose sight of the things that are important, especially in terms of services the school is offering beyond those kind of fun and tempting extracurriculars, which, are a huge part of the experience. But things like the Career Development Center, get in touch with them early. It's so easy to think, that's for later. That's for when I'm about to graduate. That's later on. But that is one of those things you need to get to know them right away. Especially if you're thinking of doing like internships, they recruit so early sometimes. And if you're not already in touch with that person and they don't know who you are, they have to dig through this pile of CVs to find you. You're not going to get that amazing internship. They need to know who you are from the beginning. So try to get in there and make those connections, within the staff and the admin teams as well, because those are the ones that if you wait till it's too late, you really might be missing some serious opportunities.
Yeah, not only the early bird gets the worm, but like the one who's memorable is going to be thought of, right? So if you have a relationship with the people in the careers team, like when an opportunity comes in, like either it's an internship or a job or whatever, like that girl I spoke to, what was her name? Alana. Yes, she would be perfect for the, you know what I mean? Like that's what you want to have happening, right? You know, let that work for you. So turn on the charm, make some friends, you know. Barry, you're on mute, darling.
What about taking on roles? You know, taking on roles of ambassador or representative. Is that something that you would think would be good, you know, immediately when you come onto campus? Or is that something that you should think about before even coming to school? Like, how do you feel that that fits in, or class rep, something?
Yeah, I think like, so for us, we have like section like leadership, and then you have club leadership, and then there's like, I think that's pretty much it. I think it falls into like those two buckets. So before I came in, I already had my strategy set out of how I was going to think about leadership. And I think everyone has a different philosophy, right? Like some people are doing leadership jobs because maybe you don't have any leadership, like true leadership experience, like on your resume, right? Maybe in the workforce, you kind of were an individual contributor coming in. Maybe you were a president of anything in college, like you were just a member. So like maybe you're like, I want to get that experience of leading really smart, intelligent people, which is a very fun group to lead and requires a very special set of skill sets to do that, right? Some people are like, I just am really passionate about this. And over the next 2 years, I want to keep working in XYZ area. And then some people are like, I'm going to use this to get a career, right? Like, I know like that we have conferences. As part of working on conferences, you have to reach out to a lot of people in industry, right? So you're like, I'm going to use this as a way to like more naturally network, get to know people. So, but I think like that's a strategy you should think about before you come in, of like what's really important, how you want to allocate your time. Me, I had a lot of leadership experience coming in, so I was like, I'm good on that. Like I've planned all the socials I need to plan. I've done all the rah stuff I needed to do. Like I was like, I'm cool on that. So I knew that day one, and it's hard too because you come in and people are like, you should do this, you should do that. I was like, I have my plan, but I appreciate the thought. I knew for me, I was like, I'm only going to try to take on things that make sense for my career and help me meet people or do a skill that I don't already have. So like my first year, the only thing I did was help with like conferences and build panels, meaning I was super interested in like the consumer side of private equity, VC. So I used that as an opportunity to reach out to professionals to like get them to be on the panel. This year, I'm just really passionate about the Black community. So I'm like running the whole conference. And so like, but like, that's kind of how I chose what I wanted to do. But I would say like, have a plan coming in. Because once again, everybody wants you to do everything. And you have to be very just like focused and centered on what makes sense for you, your goals, and your energy.
Yeah, schools offer all of these opportunities: clubs, sports teams, you know, cultural things, performance-based organizations, because there's so many people with multiple interests. You don't have to do everything. You don't have to feel like pressure. I think a lot of people actually feel like there's a pressure that they have to do everything or they're not doing enough. No, it's just that there's enough for everybody. Like you can pick and choose what's interesting to you. Because like, you know, whether you're on like, I don't know, a little intramural basketball team or a club like working on this conference that you mentioned. I mean, these are where the relationships get built and reinforced that hopefully and very often do lead to opportunities, if not in the short term, later on. As fellow alum, you remember, oh, I worked on that conference with you like 15 years ago. I'm totally going to hook you up with a job. You know, someone I know who's hiring, you'd be perfect for it. So that's how it happens. And we were also talking about, like Bara mentioned, like class reps. Some schools, some programs have class representatives that serve as sort of like a voice if there's any sort of like perhaps discontent with students, between students and faculty or students in administration, whatever. That's sometimes a role that comes up. Leadership opportunity. Student ambassadors. I love student ambassadors as an admissions consultant. Like these are people that are super helpful to my clients in getting to know the program. These people are there, of course, to answer, you know, questions about their experience and their journey, not to give like advice about like, are you eligible kind of thing for the program. But what I was thinking about and listening to you speak, Alana, is like, clearly you're somebody who's a little bit on the extrovert side, right? You're not the shyest of people, but some people are. Some people are more introvert, right? And I think we're seeing more and more evidence that introverts also make fantastic leaders, even though they might not necessarily be thought of first. And so, coming in as a new student to an MBA program, when the administration, whoever's in charge of the ambassador program, is looking at who would be an interesting, choice. Usually there's a few who would be some interesting choices as a student ambassador. Probably the extroverts are going to stand out first. So if you're on the more introvert side and you want to have that leadership opportunity, you really have to make that effort to kind of like stand out, make your voice known, introduce yourself to the person who's running the ambassador program, let them know, hey, I'm potentially interested in this. What does it involve? Like, what are the expectations? And it's a really great opportunity to, share your kind of pride and spirit for the school that you work at, to share the things that you've learned, to build relationships. By the way, a lot of the people who do reach out to you as a student ambassador will apply and eventually will be fellow students and alumni. And you might be, again, sharing the same experiences, even though you're in different years. So there's a lot of advantages, I think, to being a student ambassador. If you're selected, you're probably seen among the star students. And again, when it comes time to getting a job later, you'll probably be among those who are first thought of when opportunities arise, whether internships or employment. So I think it's a really fantastic opportunity.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add for those who are maybe more introverted is there's so many different ways to raise your hand, right? Like some things do require like an election, right? Like section president, class president, maybe Senate, things like that will require an election. But other things are like application based, right? Like if you're really scared to raise, you can just fill out the application, right? And I think I've seen this on campus. I can't speak to other campuses. There's always a leadership role that has not been filled. And so there's always a place to like step up. But I think that just goes back to like, what is it that you want to do and like putting yourself in line for that. I feel as though I'm trying to think. I can't think of someone who wanted to do a leadership position on campus and didn't do one. Like good, better, and different. This may be a hot take. There are probably more people who don't want to take on more work than people who do. So it's always opportunity.
For sure.
I think in that aspect, B School reflects corporate world.
Exactly. Quite frankly, it does. Same thing.
All right. So I think we have like only time for like another question or two. What are 3 safety checks that you guys would recommend MBA students to have in place to make the best use of their time during that first semester?
Safety checks, like in regards, like just making sure that you're on par with what you want to do.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. I think the first, and this is what I did with like at night, I tried to journal or just do a self-check. Like, how do I feel? How's it going? I prioritize therapy. So I had a therapy session every week set up the entire first year. And that helped immensely of just working through it. And that was a priority. Like I started working on this in the summer before I stepped foot on campus, was making sure I had a therapist like lined up for when I came. And I think that's really important because you're going to have a ton of emotions, a ton of things coming at you at once. And it's nice to have a third party. I was really lucky that my therapist knew Harvard, but she didn't work here. So like I could just make a reference and she knew what I was talking about. But I say that was the first check, like doing self-checks on myself, like, and then also going to therapy. I would say the second thing, having someone who's not on campus help keep you accountable. So whether it's your best friend, your parent, making sure you have a check-in with them like once a week and just talking things out. It is so easy to be in a bubble. So easy. I would say the third is like post what you want to do. Like I said, I wrote my goals for the semester. It's like 4 or 5. These are the things I really want to make sure that I do. And I have them posted in my room. So like anytime I go back to my room, anytime I'm leaving, I can look and say, yep, this is aligning to what I want to do. And I'll look at my calendar and see when things were off, right? So like if my calendar was getting real club heavy, no career heavy, like that meant that something was off and I need to like rethink about like where my time was spent. But those are some of the things. And then I would say the last thing, you don't have to do this. I actually prioritize working out every morning. So I would get up before class, like 6 a.m. and go to the gym. And that helped a ton because it was just like an hour. That was mine. It didn't belong to anyone else at the school. But like that was my way to like kind of get set. And I think that helped keep things pretty as level as it can be in the craziness of a first year.
I love that. So many people I feel under prioritize mental health and even stigmatize, and it's so important. And your answer was so complete because you talked about physical health, mental, and and emotional, and it was really balanced. I think that's really important and really good advice. Would you add anything to that, Tina?
I can't think of a thing to add. I think that was a very beautifully stated answer, Alana. And it sounds like you've really got things sorted out ahead of time, and sounds like you're on the right track.
It's because I listened to a webinar like this, and that's like literally that was the advice everyone said. It was like, before you walk in, write it down. And like that has helped a ton of me. Things go awry. Like, right, you're seeing me well rested right now. Just got out of class. And sometimes it doesn't look as pretty as it sounds, but for the most part, it stays on track.
And what I love
nice
about
to know.
it, yeah, and what I love about this is something that you can take away to the corporate world later, which is going to be crazier. And it's not a safe space anymore, and you're probably left on your own. But here you get to experiment and stretch and even find out like what works and what doesn't. And yeah, so it was really nice. And I'm also curious, this is something that I ask my clients who get in after a semester in, to see like, are you guys doing the same thing that you wrote in your essays? And I always get different answers. And I'm like, no, I found a better club here at Booth. I'm sorry. I found like a different affinity club. People are so nice there. So I have decided to go there. So plans change.
Plans change. So it's good to do check-ins. I always try to do check-ins each like semester just to see, because you learn new things. Like, I'll use a great example. I did not know what a search fund was, what entrepreneurship through acquisition was before I came into school. No clue. I never heard of it. So obviously it's not in any of the plans that I wrote before school, but being able to like have that room to flex and be like, wait, I didn't even know this existed. Let me join the club. Now I'm in the class like a year later, and that was nowhere in my essay, but it made sense. And so I think also leaving yourself the room to learn and to stretch and to grow into things that you didn't exist. Also squash, never a concept in my life. I play squash. I try to play squash now like once a week or once every other week. Not on my plans, but I enjoy it.
Nice.
Do you guys have pickleball too?
Yes, I'm only doing one sport a year. So I decided tennis is now the new sport for the year. Squash last year, tennis this year.
Tennis is the new squash. All right, guys,
Yes.
We're just about on the hour now. We're going to wrap it up in 1 second. Just want to, before we check out, I'm going to ask each of you guys, what is one thing that every MBA aspirant must check out at your respective schools? What is the must? It can be more than one thing if you want, but.
I mean, I think you have to get the classic Kincaid picture in front of the Baker Library. I feel as though everyone needs one of those. And then we have a really cool chapel on campus that's like, I don't know, like a greenhouse, has some koi fish in it. It's very relaxing. I like to go there, like to just in the craziness. But if you ever come to Boston, you gotta check those two things out. And they're right next to each other. 20-foot walk max between the two.
Nice.
I would say Michigan. I would say at Michigan, there's a couple things. First of all, Dominic's, which is it's like right next to the business school. It's across the street. And that's where a lot of the business school students get a drink and a bite to eat afterwards. And so I think like you can really feel like we often talk about when you're checking out of school, to check out what does it feel like? What are students doing when they're not doing business school? They're doing business non-school at Dominic's. So it's really nice to see that. Also, the Arboretum in Ann Arbor is like incredible. It's this beautiful place just away from the city, and it's humongous. A lot of the park systems in Ann Arbor and that whole area just kind of link up with each other. And so just to go there, just to get peace of mind, it's like the Central Park of Ann Arbor. It's really just an incredible place to just get onto the earth and be in nature without any distraction. So I think those are the two places that I'd say.
It's funny you say that. Hofstra. I went to Hofstra University for undergrad, and they have an arboretum also, much smaller than what you're describing though, but very pretty. But also on campus, I loved to go up to the top floor of the library. They had a kind of observation tower, and that's where I used to go and do my homework. And just kind of like being perched high above, looking over Long Island, and you can see New York City in the distance. It was just kind of like inspiring. There's where I'm going. That's where I'm headed. And then on campus at ESSEC, where I used to work, funny you say chapel, they have a chapel there as well. And the school, like a lot of schools, have often religious origins, but they're secular these days. And I would just slip into there because it was always empty. It was just like a little, I could hide out and just have peace and quiet and just escape and not see anyone. And it's kind of meditative. So those are my spots. Krithika, anything to add?
I'll throw one in for Columbia real quick before Krithika goes. Sorry, I totally hijacked that. I would say at Columbia, if the business school is way up north now, but there is the Hungarian pastry shop, and people all hang out there. And right across the street, St. John the Divine. You're talking about chapels, and I'm thinking about how Columbia, it's like one of the largest Gothic cathedrals in North America, possibly the world. And that's similar. Like you can just go and just be in this beautiful, immense structure. So it's really gorgeous. I'm sorry, Krithika, you're up.
No, but you're right. It's stunning. With that sculpture garden and the peacocks that are running around.
I know, like I'm gonna give competition to Tina. I'm sure Fontainebleau is so beautiful. She's gonna have something to tell us. But yeah, like I would say that the University of Michigan Museum of Art is one of the best hidden secrets. And people should take a hike there. And there's just so many things out there that they organize. But I think between me and Bara, we should do a show on Ann Arbor soon. And over to you, Tina. I'm sure you have we kept the last for the best.
Oh,
the best for the last. Sorry.
I wouldn't go that far. No, I mean, it depends whether, with INSEAD, there's the two campuses. Obviously, I was based on the Fontainebleau campus. The Singapore campus has your big city atmosphere, and the Fontainebleau campus is really, literally in the middle of a forest, very much so. I mean, you go outside one building and you're lost in the forest. So that's great for, again, just, deconnecting and finding yourself again. I guess I kind of interpreted your question a little bit differently, Eric, not so much about specific things at a specific school, but I was thinking of the people that aren't necessarily admitted to a specific school yet, but are still in that process and still trying to find, where the right school is. And I guess that's kind of how I read your question was, what are the things to look for sure before you, select your school? And I think, going to that union or wherever the students are hanging out, obviously it's not always possible to visit a school or every school you're thinking of applying to. But if it's possible to visit, your short list of 2 or 3 schools you want to apply to, I think for me personally, the number one most important thing about the school that you choose is culture and fit. If you're going to a top school, you're going to get a great education. But from one school to the next, you're going to have a totally different culture and a really different vibe. If nothing else, geographically, I mean, that's just the geographics of it. If you're in a big city in a small town in the middle of the forest, but also just the culture of the students that are there and kind of how they, like you were saying, Bara, I think, how they're interacting with each other and what that feeling is, what the vibe is there. I think, first impression, often that gut feeling that you have really does mean something. And usually if you show up somewhere, you get a feeling right away, like this feels good or this doesn't feel good. And I think that's a huge, determining factor about, it tells, all right, do I really want to go here? Or, should I check out some other schools?
I couldn't agree more. And maybe that was the best for last. A great way to wrap up the episode today. Guys, you've been all fantastic. Thank you so much, Tina, Alana, my co-host Bara and Krithika. This has been a fantastic episode, learning all about not only INSEAD and Harvard Business School, but other schools too, like Michigan and Hofstra and ESSEC and so forth. So that said, if you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe to stay on top of all the upcoming episodes. You can also see on MBAwaves.com. We'll see you next Tuesday, same time, same place, and have a great week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.